We are having RSVPs now also. Yeah. Okay. Good evening and good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to our Mumbai's Meetup 15, but which is again a virtual meetup due to the current pandemic situation. So in today's meetup, we will be covering topics related to Sonar Cube, the best practices on RAML, and all about the various data weave functions. So these were certain guidelines that we had mentioned. This is nothing that important, but yes, one point, since this platform is a little new, the Baby platform, in case you get dropped off, please join back. So all the chats and everything will be intact, so you won't lose anything. And if you are unable to mute by any chance, do write your questions in the chat section, and we'll address them as well. We are also recording the session, as Akshata just said. So all the recording and the presentation will be shared in the end. So not a problem. So agenda for the day is we've already started with the introduction, and later our speakers will take up the topics that we just mentioned on Sonar Cube, RAML, and data weave functions. We'll be having quiz sessions in between the sessions as well, not right at the end. So like be really there to answer these questions. And also networking time is not something that we will keep for just the end. We can always have take a little pause and discuss lots of things, and then proceed with the next topic. So it will not just be one way. You can keep discussing your questions, and we can have a interactive session in that way. So about us, yes, Manish, sorry.
No, so presentation will be shared on the Meetup website, right? Or
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be sharing. Also, be reading over the Telegram and WhatsApp group that it's been shared. It will be done today itself.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so most of you already know us, and whoever is new, hello once again. My name is Sudeshna Mitra. I work at Accenture. I'm a MuleSoft certified architect, having 10 plus years of industry experience. Mostly have worked on the integration platform. So, and actively been with the MuleSoft community for more than 2 years now. So thank you everybody for joining in with us and sharing your experiences and knowledge. So Manish, Akshata, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Manish Yadav, currently working as integration architect with Millennium. I have a 5+ year experience, mostly 2 year experience with nearly with architect, I would say. And yeah, we are working closely with MuleSoft community contributor like Akshata, Sudeshna, and Abhishek, other folks. So yeah, we are contributing to community to grow MuleSoft. Yeah, that's all from my side.
My name is Akshita Sawant. I'm currently working at FSRO as a senior consultant, and I'm a certified developer. I've been working with MuleSoft for on MuleSoft for past 3 years, 3+ years, and yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Manish, Akshita. Anybody who's very new to our Mumbai's meetup, can you please introduce yourself? We can pause at this, or do you want to introduce later or discuss later? I can pause for a minute if you have
Yes,
anybody
yes,
wants
that's
to
right.
introduce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have made everyone the presenter, so maybe if you all can just unmute yourself and speak.
Suresh Patra, I'm not sure he is new or not, but somehow
Yeah,
I'm
hi
seeing new
Vigneshwaran.
name. Mm-hmm.
I'm from Trichy. I'm working on MuleSoft for past 1 year. I'm currently working in Wipro, and that's pretty much. I'm new to the Mumbai meetup. This is one
Okay, great.
Welcome.
Thank you for joining.
Anyone else who would like to introduce?
I'll introduce myself then. I'm Francis
Yeah, sure, you
Edwards.
can do it.
I'm Francis Edwards. I'm from the UK. I've been working with MuleSoft for 3.5 years now. Before that, SQL, completely different technology stack. But I've managed to get up to speed with all of the Java stack, learn all of the MuleSoft and do all the exams. And I basically do lots of file movements and create APIs and moving gradually into the architect type role.
So Francis, I have one question for you, and thanks for joining again. As you said,
Yeah.
like you moved from legacy technology or something like SQL to MuleSoft, right? So how hard you find to move the technology? Like, might be if you share 2-3 line story, it might be helpful for other people who are looking for, switching the technology in MuleSoft.
Yes, certainly. I think if you have access to the infrastructure, so you can see the files, see the jar files, see what libraries you're using, you get a better understanding. So I've benefited from coming straight in as a system administrator, so I have full access to the MuleSoft runtime. Install the runtime, learn how the runtime is set up, do some patching and see what jar files are overwritten and how you stop and start it. If you're able to start from that basis, you can work your way up. Typical problems that I deal with now are things like Bayer client not connecting to a push topic in Salesforce. That was my latest issue this week. I would never understand that if I did not understand which jar files, which libraries were used with which connectors and dependencies. I'm able to now ascertain that there's a timeout because of either permissions set up within Salesforce or the environment not doing an SSL handshake. So you can learn a lot of things with MuleSoft. The basics are the actual connections, but your problems are usually networking, TLS settings, and being able to enforce security. The architect side of MuleSoft does allow you to drag and drop things in quite quickly, but many of your problems will be simply understanding the network layer, the stuff that MuleSoft is built on top of. So that's where I've built my strengths over the last 3 years. MuleSoft, I would say you can learn in 6 months to a year, but your infrastructure that you're built on top of, that's where you sort out your real problems.
Thanks. Yeah, nice to hear such a story. It might be help someone who are looking to switch the technology. Yeah, thanks, Francis.
Okay.
Yeah, really. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So maybe I'll move to the next slide.
Yeah.
Maybe when we break, we can again take up introduction if anybody has joined later. Yeah. Okay. So like every time, we have a few important announcements regarding the latest releases and news. So this is a reminder that the registration for the MuleSoft Hackathon will end on the November 29th. So a few more days. So it's still, you have time to register and submit your project. This is the registration link that is mentioned here. Just keep this date in mind and just quickly submit your ideas. So also, if you have any questions regarding this, you can reach out to us. We'll try to help you out. So we have a new release, Anypon Studio 7.7. You have a lot of information on this. We'll be sharing this link in the chat section. There's a blog well written, and I just have a few points also, which we can just quickly browse you through. That is that this release will help us write DataV faster, create API specifications, and connect to GovCloud. So for many more details, everything is available right now in the blogs and in the docs of MuleSoft. So you can go there, and we'll be sharing these pages as well with you to find out what is new and what you can do with Studio 7.7.
There's a new cloud which has been introduced, the government cloud. So that is which is compliant, security compliant with the US government, federated, all those things, all the government policies and all. It's been following that stuff. So it's very much secure for government and community. Public sectors to use this cloud, which makes it secure. The information which is there is protected on this government cloud. So that is something new which is introduced in the latest release. So do check out those features as well. I'm just sharing you the blog
Yeah,
link.
you shared the blog link. Yeah.
I've shared.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody has any question before I move? Because we will be starting with our presentation now with the main topic of the day. So anybody has any questions before I move on? Manish, you
No,
want to add anything
no, I think we are
regarding
good.
hackathon? Everything's okay?
Yeah, everything is okay. I can see everything you have mentioned very good in the slide itself. So I don't think anything I have to add. Yeah.
Okay. So before I hand it over to the speakers today, I will just briefly introduce them. We have Supriya Pawar and Sumit Ahoja, who are our speakers for the second time. Thank you, Supriya and Sumit. So I will, you all can share your screen and take over, do your introduction and start with the topic for the day. So I'll stop sharing from here.
So speaker, organizer part is over, Sudeshna.
Yeah.
Thank you, all the organizers.
Organizers are going to sleep now, or
No,
are
no,
We
they?
no.
can't
will be
sleep.
there. We
So
can't sleep.
I'll just stop the sharing. Let us know if you are having any difficulty. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, organizers. And the reason we are giving the meetup for the second time is because of the enthusiastic organizers like you who keeps us motivated, and in the group who are like continuously active. So I think big hand for you guys, and thank you so much. So I'll begin with the introduction. I do not have a PPT for myself, but my name is Supriya, and I've been working in MuleSoft since last 4 years. My total years of experience is from the organization Accenture, and it's total 7 years. Um, Earlier to MuleSoft, I've worked on the integration technologies like TIBCO and JBoss Fuse. And in MuleSoft, I think, yeah, like versions from Mule point 3.6 to 4.3.0, all the versions I've worked on. And in Accenture, my role is as a technical delivery team lead as of now. And yeah, I think that's it. And I hope, thank you so much for joining today's session. I hope it will be informative for you. Apart from session also, I am available on LinkedIn and definitely over the email. You guys can reach out for any queries. Thank you so much. Sumit?
Yeah, thank you, Supriya. I would like to introduce myself. So first of all, my name is Sumit Ahuja. First of all, a very big thank you to all of you to joining the session. Good evening. Hope you all are staying safe. So coming back to me, my role I have completed 5 years of years and tenure, my IT tenure in Accenture only. My relevant MuleSoft experience is 3.7 as of now. And recently I have accomplished all the certifications according to my level, like platform level 1 and integration architect. According to my roles and responsibilities, my designation is senior developer, and I am working as a lead developer, and kind of which is involved in from starting from the business requirement to the post production activities. And this is my second mention. This is our second meetup where we have participated as a speakers, and all big thanks to these all three organizers. Which this is a very informative platform which is giving us the opportunity to come forward and enhance our skill set. Yeah, so big thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you,
Yeah,
Sumit.
thank.
Having said
Yeah.
that, I would like to share my screen and begin to the presentation.
Yep.
Just allow me one moment.
We'll let you know in case there's any question from the audience. You can pause and address the question as well. Okay.
Definitely.
Yep.
Definitely.
Sure.
Is everyone is able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. So, as I've already mentioned, thanks again for joining our session today. Our efforts are going to be towards providing the this thing like providing the background around the three topics which we have mentioned on the screen. So very first is MuleSoft code review automation using SonarQube. The another one is RAML best practices, and the third one is going to be the DataWeave functions Mule 4.3. So I think without wasting time, I would like to begin from like with the MuleSoft code review using the Sonar Cube. So as you guys know, like before few months, the MuleSoft has introduced this automation, which is using the Sonar Cube. And the very first topic for today's presentation is this. And I will, throughout the presentation, we will give you a demo also on the code which we have ran, and we will show you how the code review is actually happening. How can you apply the rules? That is something which we'll talk about. And while during the implementation, what all challenges we have faced, we'll talk about that also, because that is something which we found it was a bit challenging, and I hopefully that will help you. So I'll have to again start it. Okay, so everyone in the audience, I think if you're some or the other way, if you're, you know, like you are from any background, whether it's a Java, whether it's any other technology, or whether it's a Mule, the code review is must. Okay, so can anybody answer me that what is the layman definition of a code review, why the code review is important, and what all are the impacts if we don't include this process? Basically, how important is this process? Can anybody? I can't see all the audience, and I do not wish to take anyone's name, but just like that, because we want to make this session interactive, we need a networking, we need an acknowledgement from you.
Supriya, hi, Abhishek here.
Hi, Abhishek.
Yeah. So why code review is important? What I can say is like, suppose sometimes it's like when we are developing something. Okay, it is possible like in the case of development, we might miss some standards just because our mind is not just on development. So when we do a one shot or two shot of code reviews, then we can know, okay, this naming convention should be fine because coding standard should be maintained. Okay, naming convention should be there, proper indentation should be there. So all those stuffs can be done in a coding review.
Thank you, Abhishek. Very good. Anyone else? In your respective projects, what are the mechanisms you're using for the code reviews? Is it manual, or have you generated your own tool, or it is already Sonar? If anybody, I think Sonar is usually used for the Java codes. That's what I've heard, and I've used it also for like few of our JBoss Fuse projects. So anybody who has a different approach? Okay, I think, okay, so as Abhishek mentioned, why code review is important, there's certain times, being a developer from a beginning, there are certain times when we go ahead in the journey, like we have reached the stage or the SIT of UAT, and then we realize that this was the part which we did not cover. So this part could be related with the exception handling, could be related with the very, very important points which we have forgot to, implement or forgot to add it. And the very, very basic example could be using the HTTPS protocol instead of HTTP. If we want to if we want to maintain a secure connectivity, we generally go for the HTTPS. So this is one. Another example could be like whoever works in the MuleSoft, they very well, you guys can relate with this, that whenever we create a data weave, okay, so in our mind, we are writing a data weave code and we do not generally externalize that. Okay, but it is very important to externalize the code because the same file we can use over and over again in the different flows. So these are the 2-3 types of example which, in the very beginning, after just a rough development, if we catch that, then, and if a tool like a Sonar is helping us to do that, then we can reduce our manual mistakes. And these are the some points, bullet points, which are mentioned on the screen. So one of them is consistent design and implementation throughout the projects. I am working as a developer. I am working on one API. My colleague is working on another API. Consistent design and implementation we can bring in our project. We can minimize our mistake, and later on the impact will be really less. We will definitely increase the project quality, and we can meet the client requirement or the business requirement in a very specific and a nice way. And the very important is improving the code performance. I think that is not going anywhere. Everyone talks about it. And whenever, like suppose my API doesn't have SQL, but my colleague's API consists SQL, Now, there is some technique which can be used to check the code on those backgrounds. That is something which is a new technique which we can definitely introduce. So this is the overall picture of a code review, and I have given you the reasons. That's the reason it's very, very important and a vital part of the entire development. We are, as you know, our topic is code review using Sonar. We'll just move ahead. Okay. So I'll talk about Sonar first, and then we can, go ahead with the slides thing. Sonar is actually the open source tool. It is used for the continuous code quality that will measure and analyze the entire code. It is built in the Java. Okay, so the language which it is built in, it is Java, but it helps us to analyze the code with the different languages. So no matter whether the code is in CSS, HTML, XML, Python, PHP, Mule, or any such a language, CSS for that matter. So we'll see the languages also in the UI, which I'm going to show that to you. Those also it is going to cover. So this is an overall picture of a Sonar. Let's talk about the prerequisite, which, which this is actually a good thing which MuleSoft has come up with. And we thought that we have explored it, but still there are some future scopes. For example, how are you going to merge this with your code? Locally, we are going to show that how you're supposed to run it, but how can you make a use there wherein every developer can use it in the same server and etc. Those are something future scope things which we have not explored yet, but definitely our primary trial is going to be to show you that how we reach till this step and how you can do your code review things. Okay, so let's talk about the prerequisites. So prerequisites here, I have given the links also. The SonarQube Community Edition, then there is Java SDK 11, and then there is a Mule SonarQube plugin. I'll talk about the Sonar Community Edition, which I am using as a 8.5 version. That is something like that is only helping us to validate the code and etc. So that is the main application from Sonar which they have given. Now let me talk about the plugin. It is a part of a software. As you know, the plugin, it is generally a part of a software which you can easily inject in your projects. Is the open source design, and it's validate the Mule application code using the SonarQube. Now the plugin contains of certain rules and a metrics. Now you must be thinking that what kind of a metrics which we use in the Mule. I'll give you a few examples. For example, how the number of flows are present, number of subflows are used, how the exception handling is conducted, how many number of M-unit test cases are written. So these are certain metrics which are the part of the this SonarQube plugin. So as you see, I'll show that too on my screen also. But these are the screenshots which I've captured for you guys. So plugin master, as I have told you, we have installed it, extracted it definitely. And then there is a SonarQube which has a version 8.5.1 and JDK 11.9. This is something which we have installed. You just have to kind of extract it. Config changes and jar creation. Now this is something I'll speak about. Config changes meaning in the SonarQube there is a conf file, and in conf file there is a Sonar properties and a wrapper configuration. There was a certain time when I ran the Sonar for the first time, it was running properly, and then I've started facing some issues with respect to the transport port. Okay, for that matter, in the Sonar properties, we have found a solution that in Sonar properties, there is a terminology called as an elastic port, which is defined as a Sonar search port. So by default value of that port is 9001. But in case if you are facing some transport related issues, you can switch that port to 0. And 0 meaning it will use any free port, and then that onwards, like using that, you will not face such issues. Creating jar is something I will come back after showing you during the demo. Now there is certain terminologies like rules addition and how to start the Sonar. Now you know that SonarQube you have already extracted in the bin folder. It works for the other these things also, backgrounds. Linux also it works, Unix also it works. Now we are using Windows, and in Windows there is a start Sonar back. This is the command which we have to use. Now there is something called as a rule addition, which I'll speak about, that how we have added this rule, also how we have created this plugin, and then further how it needs to be under the folder of extension and plugins. this is something I would like to stop the presentation and show you on the screen. As I was showing you, this is the plugin which we have installed. Okay. On this plugin, there's certain command which I have also mentioned on the PPT. You have to use the command which goes like this: MVN clean package, Sonar packaging, Sonar plugin, D language mule. This is something which you have to use. Using this command in the target, this SonarQube plugin will get generated. This plugin you have to use inside the extension folder. Now the use of it is whatever rules we are trying to incorporate in this extension, those will get reflect in your own UI, okay, which you are opening with your credentials. That's the use of this, that this is the reason we create the plugin. And the plugin, to create the plugin, I've just told you which command you're going to use.
So Priya, I would like to add something on the plugin. So plugin like SonarQube doesn't comes with the Mule language in a standard way. It has 20 languages, Java, Python, and CSS kind of, but Mule doesn't. Mule is not part of it. So there is no other procedure. So we have to install, or we have this plugin in the SonarQube server. And that way we can have Mule code, the code review process for Mule projects. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vish. So thank you so much, Sumit. That is the reason we, use this plugin. Now the another part is, as I said, start the Sonar. That's something which I have mentioned. So for the benefit of time, I have just done it already, but definitely at least I can show you the folders. As I mentioned, it works with the another backgrounds as well. For example, the Linux or this Mac OS. So we are using the Windows. So this is the command. So you can directly click this command. Also, you can go like this. You can open a command from window and you can simply click the Start Sonar back. It is definitely give me the error because my Sonar is already started, which is here. So after starting, as I mentioned, this will give you such a messages whether your SonarQube is up or not. And I was mentioning about the port, which, if you're using a 9001 port again and again, then that throws error. That is something which we have observed. There's a possibility that you may not observe that, but the default port is going to be 0. That is something which you have to use. Coming back to the PPTs, we spoke about the how to start and etc. Now, okay, let me talk about the code. Okay, for the demo purpose, I'll show you the rules also, whatever we have added in the extension, how we are going to run it. Before starting to the demo, I just want to show you that what kind of a code we have created. This is a very, very simple code wherein I have purposely not mentioned the very important things. And this is how after running the code, it will give me maximum bugs, maximum vulnerabilities, maximum code smells, so that I can explain it to you in a very better way. So this is the reason I've kept it as a very, very small flow. Now, after completing your flow, let's talk about the POM. Okay. In POM, there are few dependencies and plugin which needs to be added. As part of a property, you have to add this, which is sonar.sources. Now you will understand that src slash will ensure that whatever files are there inside the src for the Sonar validation, it will incorporate all these files. So this is one thing which we will add. Then coming back to, there's some plugins which will online also will be available, and during our PPT and this thing also we will try to share it with you. So for Sonar coverage report, this is the plugin which we have to add in the POM. And then there is a profiling. There is this Jacob profiles also, which.
Superior, I'm not sure. I think my screen got freeze or like which plugin you're saying, like for Sonar?
This one.
Can you just highlight the plugin, Supriya?
Yeah. And also, Supriya, go a little slow. Even my screen is getting a little hang.
Oh, okay, definitely.
Yeah, thanks.
Sumit, just correct me if I'm wrong. The screen is visible to you, and can you point?
Yeah,
Hello,
it's
Sumit?
visible. We can see the plugin, Gecko plugin now.
But
Coverage
I can't
report.
see the plugin. I can see the coverage report that is for Mule A-Minute plugin, but I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
Plugin
that's
is
what.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think I have.
MuleSoft.mminute.tools. Yeah. Now we can see
Mhm.
Jacob also,
Yeah.
Supriya.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I think the screen is lagging. I think I opened this 1 minute back.
Yep.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So as I've mentioned, this is something which we need to add, and then there is one property which you have. I hope the property section is visible properly now.
Yeah, it is.
Mhm.
This one. Yeah. Okay. So this I have already mentioned. Inside the SRC, whatever going to be the file, it will try to include those files. Now let's come back. Whenever the project is ready, as you know how to open the project from backend, we can operate it using the CMD command. So this is something which I've already used. Again, I'll make 1 or 2 changes and we can try that again. So this is the command which we have to run on the code. Okay. Now, as anybody has worked,
What is the
Sorry,
command?
can you click on hide? Like I can't see the like while presenting the screen, you can see some toggle bar, right, or something. Stop sharing or hide. So you can just click on hide.
Yeah, now it's
Yeah.
come.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, fine.
Mhm.
So I was talking about, I've just shown you the code. Okay, in code, definitely the code requirement as per everyone's project, it is going to be different. I've tried to include it I've tried to kept it really small, which is just the HTTP listener using one transformation. I've used one component as of now. And then we'll go back and we will read about some rules. And then we will exactly see that how the rules are going to get implemented. So as you see, this is the command which we have to use on the code. Now let me talk about the rules. Let me know once it is visible to you. It is inside the extension plugins, and then there is 2 files, rule 4, rule 3.
See. Yeah.
Okay, fine. So I'll open the rule 4 because I've created a project in the Mule 4. So I'll try to open the rule 4 XML. I'll try to explain 1 or 2 rules which are very basic. You will also understand by just reading it. So while defining the rule, there is name, description, there is a severity, and then there is a type. Here also you can change. The types are going to be the code smell, the vulnerability, and then the bug. And the severity is going to be major, minor, like that. So let's read few names. For example, application.
Superior, just a minute. So Akash, Akshta, and Sudesna, some people are facing, they are seeing a smaller screen. I'm not sure what is the trick, like how.
So what you all can do is, you can just right click on the screen and you'll just see an option to like show controls. So once you do show controls, you can see like a bar like YouTube, like you can see. So there you can just click on the square button and it will be maximized.
Okay. So right click on the screen and then
Right.
go to the
Show controls.
Yeah.
So you
Then
can
you
see
can
a
see
square
on your
maximize.
yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. Sorry, Superior. Thank you.
So it was looking minor screen was.
Yeah, I mean the thing is that the images are covering up most part of the screen.
There is an option to maximize actually in the control
Maximize it
section.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry to disturb you. Can continue.
No, not at all. So application should have use API kit. Now we all know we mostly use REST API. What is the use of API kit and something? So that is one. Then the configuration file should not have so many flows. Now the very basic, which I'll show you, which I was just reading. HTTP listener should use a specific port property. That is something which will come. So these are the type of rules which we have to define. Now this is the list of some 21 rules. As per the project, you can keep on adding rules. There are some rules which are related to the trust store, and there are rules which is related to the SQL. Now there's a matter that you may not have that in your code, but that is completely optional, that what you want to add and what you're not. And this like making such a files, it will ensure that you can organization can have 100 of their rules. I don't think so it will be more than 100, but 100 of their rules, and they can incorporate it in one file so that Sonar can validate it. Coming back to the UI now.
There's one question. Sorry, Supriya, to disturb. There's one question from Ravi Kashyap actually. Can we use this plugin for Mule 3? So yes, you can use. So what we have done is we have created different files for Mule 4 different rules for Mule 4 and Mule 3, and there is a different XML file. By default, SonarQube will consider Mule 4 XML, and but if you want to run Mule 3, you can set that profile in the Sonar UI. If you want to have for Mule 3 rules, if you want to like enable Mule 3 rule file, and then the same plugin will be reused for both Mule 3 and Mule 4, so you can reuse that.
Okay.
Just to add one more point. So see, Mule 3 and Mule 4 underlying code is XML, right? So just you have to select the XML profile for SonarQube, and the rule which you are writing for Mule 3 and Mule 4 will be different, as Sumit explained. So only the rule will be different, but yeah, underlying profile will be same, like XML profile, irrespective of the version.
Because the XPath expressions are going to be different, as we have different connector configuration in both the versions.
Definitely.
Yes. Yeah. So that is the reason you have to write different rule.
Yep.
For both the version. Yeah.
Now, next in the PPT also, we can move to the Sonar UI. I would like to explain you some things about this. Like if you open the Sonar UI, now this is on the local host. If you're opening this, as soon as this Sonar is up, which I've showed you here, this SonarQube is up, you're going to see such a screen. So you can use a URL like HTTP, localhost, and port is going to be 9000. Inside the Sonar UI, there is a project which talks about that how many projects are you going to. As of now, I just have one project listed. Definitely, if I'll create a new project, if I'll run my command on the new project, one more project will come here. The another part is going to talk about the issues. In issues also, it will talk about how many bugs are there, how many vulnerabilities are there, and code smell. The difference between bug, vulnerability, and code smell is going to be the error which is going to break your code, which is not really acceptable, but it will come as a part of a bug. For example, credential and resources should be managed with the different application properties. So let me tell you, the test project which I've done, I've purposely not added any property, because this is a general practice that generally SRC main properties section, I think all the developers have started keeping the different properties, and yeah, it is a very important rule. So that is something which I have not kept, hence it has given this error. Then there is this vulnerability, which is speaking about the auto discovery should be used to register. Now, what is vulnerability? I think it is the suggestion to secure your code or from the attacks, something like that. So that will TLS and everything can come under this part. Now, the code smell is something which is a maintainability. Now, not necessary that if you have to have fixed that, but this is for the betterment of your project, for better maintainability. So this is the three difference in rules. As I'll go to quality profiles first. In the initial, I have told you that the plugin which we are creating, that we are adding in the extension. Having said that, after adding the Mule plugin in a proper way, this is something which will auto-populate in your Sonar. If you will try to open it right now, Mule is not something which is by default. You have to explicitly add that. Now there is Mule 3 rules, which is 18, Mule 4 rule, which is 27, which we have added. So it will come as a part of a quality profiles first.
Yeah.
And whatever rule, yes,
you have to set is if you see right now, the default is Mule 4. You can change here in the settings. There is a settings button beside never. You can set Mule 3 as a default as well when you want to run your Mule 3 projects. And so you can show also the administration section, right?
I will. I'll go one by one. So quality profiles, as Sumit rightly mentioned, we can change it from Mule 4 to Mule 3 according to our requirements. Quality gates is something which will tell you about the report, that whether the code is good to go or not, like that. Let's come talk about administration section. In administration section, one point I will cover.
Yeah, those profiles already present, right? By default, they were present in Mule 4, like in the Mule 3, Mule 4.
No, that are not. Actually, when you install the Mule plugin, when we install the Mule plugin, we there was one jar created right in the target folder, and we copied that jar into Sonar server. Okay. So in the Sonar server, the other languages plugins are already there for Java, for CS, and by default there are thousands of rules created by default, but for Mule there is none. So we have to do these manual steps here.
These manual steps are required. So tomorrow, just imagine, instead of Mule, you're using something else. And the similar kind of plugin you have to create this jar file, add it as a part of a Sonar, then only it will get reflect. But answer to your question is Mule was not by default, but other things,
Others
for
by
example,
default, yeah,
CSS, HTML. These are something which are very basic. It was from the start, and Mule is something which got added after adding the plugin. Okay, we were on the administration. Administration, one point I will cover. Sumit, you pitch in if you want. Yeah, so as we mentioned, as soon as we add the plugins, which is for the Mule, in admin section, in quality profiles, and the same rules of the quality profiles, whatever in the files we have mentioned, those will get reflect as a part of the rule. Sumit?
Yeah, Supriya, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, fine. So let's talk about the project which we have already run. So as I've showed you the test project which we have run, and then there is this command. Yeah, this command. Basically, you can run this again. Now you must be thinking about the projects. If suppose there's a project, the project will definitely differ from the name of the project. Here it is a test. But if you want to run the Sonar validation again on the same project, you can simply use the same command which I have shown you. And if it is the different project, the another section of the project will come. And one project I have just ran before 1 hour ago of our session. Once this is successful, it will show you build success. You have to go here, refresh it, and now it is giving that the last analysis was done 28 seconds ago. This is the way you open. Okay, this is basically the UI. This is how it will give you the information. But for the main and the issues related information, you have to go here. Here in the left section, I have already told you what is the difference between these three types. Severity also we have spoken, what is minor, major, blocker, etc. So yes, for my project, against my project, the Mule 4 file has got validated, and these are the issues which I have received in the code. Okay. 1 or 2 we can definitely validate. Let's go to bugs. As I mentioned, I have not added any application property. We can go back in the code. There's no application property differently for different environments maintained. So this is the bug which came. HTTP status code should have been properly set inside the exception handler. Let me tell you, exception handling is something which we have not included. Let's talk about the vulnerability now. Auto discovery should be registered in the app API manager. I think API kit router is something which I have not added. Auto discovery ID as part of that only, it has not come or I have not added. And then there is a code smell. HTTP listener should use a specific code property. Now this is the rules which are already there. So any rule you can pick up, you can read an explanation about it. You will exactly understand that why it is failed.
Yeah, there's a question from Ravi Kumar Shah. He wants can we explain one of the rules that we have written? So if you can go on the XML, we can just explain one of the HTTPS or a TLS, one kind of rule. There's an XPath expression written so you can just...
Yeah, any one we can definitely cover. For example, let's go for this rule maybe. Okay, the category is the flows. Okay, now there is some configuration file should not have so many flows. Configuration file should not have so many flows. Now here, as part of your requirement, as part of your API, you can have your own count. But here we have maintained the count as 10. So if it is going to be greater than 10, this will come, this will show that it's a major rule break. Okay. But if you have observed, this code was not there because the flow is not such a big flows, such a big project which will have the maximum flows. Okay. If you want, we can check. Yeah, now this one, if you consider, now this is also something which is not hard and fast rule, not applicable for every API. whoever is using the DBs for MySQL. Tomorrow, if you are not using MySQL, you're using a JDBC, you can write your own rule wherein you can mention that you don't want the hard-coded values. And definitely, as part of hard-coded values, when you drag the JDBC, how does the connector looks like from a backend. And you can add such a parameters here and you can get this checked. The part of the rule is name, description, severity, type. I think that is something which you have to, keep in mind. With that, I think XPath is very important. That the way you are defining the XPath. After our demo, we are also after the entire UI validation, we are going to also show that there is one option wherein you can add your custom rules and not use these files. But that is something we did not opt for that option as of now, because adding the custom rules one by one after another is not possible. That's the reason we have gone for this demo wherein we are using the rules file which is full of rules. But we will definitely show you how to create it.
Yeah, actually there are two ways to create a rule. One, which is something that we are currently showing via XML files, and here we can have we can keep on adding the XML files, and if someone else from your colleague wants to install local Sonar in their local system, so they can directly use these XML files. They don't want to, there's no need to create the custom rules in each and every PC, because currently we can see Sonar is not that famous, and we just give a thought like, why can't we, because this is something can create a big impact on code review lifecycle, and we just thought to explore this. And currently we are exploring this on a local server, but yeah, there is a plan that we'll explore on a Sonar cloud as well, where we can see what Venu Anantala is asking the question, like, can we externalize the rules? For now, we don't have that clarity whether we can, but there might be some option in Sonar cloud server where we can externalize the rules and share the custom rules with the account. So yeah, we will do that. Thank you.
I think many modifications as per the project requirement and as per the organization, that what particularly they are using, I think that can definitely modify, because always the community will give us the tool, but how to make it and how to make a best use of it is something which we decide. That's the reason, apart from the custom rules, we thought we'll go with these options wherein we can actually show you. Okay. Coming back to the UI. Yeah, so these are the type of rules, and this is the kind of a validation, a good kind of a report which you can see. There will be a better clarity and a better picture of each and every issue. You can go back, fix the issue, run the code again, and the time which your code validation takes. Or for example, me myself is a lead in my organizations. I generally review the codes. So there are some small mistakes also which people tend to do, because sometimes the timelines of a projects are too tidy. So that's the reason we mess up in the code. But this is something which is not manually testing, which is automatically testing. So definitely it is good for our use also, not in the organization, not in the project, but we ourselves, if we are developing some code, we can quickly get this tested just before putting the code in any environment. Even if starting the code in the local environment, we can get this tested for ourselves, for our purpose. Okay. Coming back to the one point which I wanted to mention is about the custom rule. So yeah, about custom rules, we have also got some information. So now there is a XPath which inside the rules which it is given to you. It says that track the breaches of the XPath rule. Now there is some template which is given. You have to follow that template. Now you can compare the rule which I was showing on the files, and then here it says create. You have to give a name of the rule, which is this. Then there is a description, and then there is a severity which you can mention, status you can mention. And now in the expression, you have to add a XPath expression. Now the rules file which I was showing you, that was full of expressions. Okay, it was a different kind of expressions. So one of the expression you can add here, and you can create a rule. You can give your own message, that what message you want. XPath the matching fail or API kit not found, anything you can try, and you can say create, and the custom rule will get create. That is the way you can create a.
Priya, one question. What do you mean by file pattern? Somewhere I have seen file pattern. If you go to the UI, like where you are trying to explain XPath, I can see something called file pattern.
A file pattern is something like where we want to, like if you want to check the error related file, so we can just give the expression like */ and then / which they will check only that files that that we want them to check. It is optional by default, but we have that capability to mention here.
Yeah, but question to your answer, as you know, Manish, in SRC main resources, how do we have that generally? Because the naming convention, every project is different. There are few people who will call it as a worker.xml, meaning the entire description is going to be there. There are people who will call it as a configuration XML, right? And this is the terminologies which are used. Not necessary for the error files also, we will mention it as an error XML. It's up to us. We can anywhere or incorporate. So file pattern is generally used for that. It will exactly understand that what is the pattern of the file you have to exactly check in the code.
Oh, I mean, so XPath will check that file only, right?
That rule will be applied only for that file, not for all the files. Yeah.
Yes. So there is one question from Apurva, and how helpful to check the performance aspect of API. So this is not related to performance, I would say, and this is something that's code review.
No, Apurva, do you really mean that when you say performance, meaning are you talking about the code's performance? I mean, how the code is going to behave, or are you talking about that, you know, that performance which we consider as part of a testing, wherein there's going to be multiple transactions and a huge people or huge consumers are going to use the API? Are you talking from that point of view? Bit clarity I need on your question, actually.
So performance generally means the way you are explaining superior, like response time and transaction, and also I don't think so that this plugin is useful for performance.
No. See, I'll tell you one thing. As part of rules, you can add in your own configuration that for HTTP requester, for HTTP listener, this should be the timeout. Okay, this should be the the SLA is something which you can mention, but generally it will not come in the code. It will generally come on the API policies when we define. So what you're saying about performance, yeah, I think about timeout, if you're talking, you can add that. Or
Sonar is best for the code performance, actually, not for the API performance. So you can perform on the code, but not on the API.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as Shiva mentioned, performance is a different aspect. That's correct. Yeah. Yes. Yes, Supriya, go ahead now.
Okay. So I think here we are. I think this is how we had explained you. And definitely while running this, the kind of issues we have faced, definitely you will also face. So reach out to me if certain issues are there which we can quickly resolve. I'll definitely try to resolve it. And having said that, I want to conclude this Sonar related session. And this is the conclusion that automation, as throughout the session I was mentioning that this code review process is going to reduce the delivery time, definitely the human errors. It will reduce so that going ahead in the picture, we should not be coming back and saying that these are the primary things of the development which one of the developers has missed. So that is something which we can get saved. And the kind of reports and everything you have seen, so I think that it is best for the documentation purpose also. So going forward, I think the manual efforts are going to get reduced, the time is going to get reduced. I think that's it on the Sonar review process part, which is for the Mule. Any other questions specifically you have? Is there a message, Sumit?
I was also going through the chat.
So there is no question asked as of now. I would say I think if people have answered all the question, and I don't think so there is any question left. If someone has some question, then they can surely reach out to.
You can definitely explore this. This is really good. I'll try to provide some reference links also.
Yeah, we can provide some reference. Yeah.
Okay, I think. Thanks. What was the plan?
Yeah, Akshita, you can take it now. Might be. You are talking on mute, Akshita.
Do you have any questions?
The next is going to be the RAML best practices we will be talking.
Okay, so that will be taken.
No, I want to understand the plan. Like, are we going to go for a break, or we can continue
No, we
with
won't
the
break.
random?
But if you have any question you want to ask, you can take up a quiz question if you want.
I think we will take up the questions later on. Or
That's fine.
for that matter, I think let me ask the questions on
Yeah.
the questions which we have
We
had.
have 3
So
questions, so
about
we can
sonar,
take
I
up
think.
one now.
You can ask
Okay,
the
fine.
question related to sonar, and then once I'll be completing the ramble, then I'll ask about the ramble. That's fine.
Okay, fine. Okay, so the very first question is about the demo which we have had. Is I would continuously.
So you
Hello.
all can answer the question in the comment section. I mean, in the chat section, whoever answers first, we'll be taking the first 5 or first 3 names, and then we'll be doing we'll be selecting the winner. So
Yeah,
first one,
wheel of names to do the
wheel
winner.
of names. So you can shoot the question now.
I hope everyone is ready. And the question goes like this. While showing you the demo, we were talking about a sonar search code. So I want to understand the very first thing is what is the default port and what is the free port. So you answer the default port first and then the free port.
Oh God, I can see a lot of answers.
Yeah, I know. Shweta is always on the top. She'll always answer. So we just consider the first.
So Shweta, we can skip Shweta. Shweta is brilliant girl. So
So I'll just list down the name. And we can have a.
We have few incorrect answers as well. So, Supriya, maybe you can just tell the correct answer before we. So this was. I'm just writing down the question in the chat for everybody to know.
I think most of all have given the right answers. There are really few wrong answers. So the question which I've asked is like you have to give the default port first and then the free port. So 9001 and 0 is the answer.
Okay.
So we'll list out the name. And
I think you can list out few like three people at least who have given because they have given on the same time, I guess.
I'm
Yeah, so
taking
let's
this one. I'm
list
taking
all the
this
people,
one.
and
Yeah.
we will use the link.
Thank you, Supriya.
Or on this, shall we ask one more question? Just like
No,
that,
that's
maybe even if you want.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
No, it's fine.
You can
Like
go
we
ahead if you
can
have.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean,
okay,
just
fine.
for.
So the another question is,
Yeah,
just for the purpose, like if both the answers, one person has
This is not a
given
quiz
the right.
question.
Huh?
This is not a quiz question. You can go ahead.
Yeah, this is not a quiz question. So the another thing is like, what is the difference between? I have mentioned the three in the issues. I have mentioned the very three important things. So what is bugs? What is vulnerability? And what is the code smell? If anybody can briefly answer that.
Like a revision to what you.
Even if there is a this question they are giving. Yeah, Praveen's answer is quite nice. Sorry, Praveen, but I don't think so. This is a quiz question. I'm really sorry. Venu has given the first answer also very nicely. Code smell, kind of a standard break, kind of a HTTP port.
So, Supriya, basically, bug is something the error that we have in code that we need to address immediately, and vulnerability may be a suggestion. Okay, this can be done better, and code smell can be termed as something that we need from maintenance perspective, maybe.
Correct, Shweta, I agree. Okay, I think 3-4 people have already answered that question. Thank you so much, guys. This indicates that you were alive throughout the session, and I'm very happy to know that. Okay, fine, Akshata. We can move to the another topic now.
Yeah, Sumit, you can.
I think over to Sumit. Thank you
Yeah.
guys for the time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll share my screen quickly. Let me know, any of you, if you are able to see my screen.
We can see.
You must be seeing a PPT.
Yeah, PPT.
Okay. So okay, yeah. So first of all, I would like to throw some of the light on the agenda of this topic. This topic is extremely vast. A hell lot of stuff I think we can cover on this topic, but due to time constraint, we have came up with some important guidelines or principles, I can say, that one should take care of before implementing any API or a RAML. Okay, this session will be a mix of API best practices plus RAML best practices. And before starting, I would like to know, like, what comes in your mind when you see when you heard about best practice. What is best practices, and why? Where there is a need of best practice? What is the impact of that? If someone can come forward and answer this. Anyone who would like to answer?
No, I'm saying,
Yeah, you can just monitor on the chat window
Hi, I'm monitoring.
because I can't see.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, someone was saying something.
I asked like no one answering should answer. Yeah, so
Yeah, please.
best practice, when we see the word like best practice, then it comes in our mind like how good we are writing the code, means how understandable they are. Like if we see the code, then easily we can understand that one, and how reusable it is. Like if we are using traits or something, then how reusable it is.
Yeah, that is correct. But yeah, I would like to explain some briefly about that. Thank you. Um, Basically, what best practice is, it's a method, or we can say a technique that has been generally accepted as a superior, because, and there are some alternatives as well. So because it produces the results that are very superior to the other alternatives. And how you can find best practices any of the field, you can find best practice. Finding best practice is simply taking the time to research what you are planning to do and finding the best way to go for it. Okay, just whatever you do, just think it for best practice in every little thing you do in a daily to daily basis. Everything has a best practice involved in that, and it can for sure give you the better result. So with that, I would like to start with the current topic that we are discussing. So the I would just like to walk through on what is RAML and why there is a need of RAML first of all. So again, I'll ask someone, if someone of can answer what is RAML and why there is a need that we should design and RAML for a API. Why can't we go without RAML?
Come on, guys. I think RAML is something is like our day-to-day bread.
Baby.
Baby?
For every API, normally we need RAML, right?
It's not a baby. It's a father. It's a father. It is giving birth to the
Yeah.
child and the resources. A father.
Okay, no problem. I would like to take cover this. Yeah. So RAML, what is RAML? Basically a REST API modeling language, and it's based on YAML. So it is basically used to describe your API. What all it contains? It contains your URL, endpoint URL, and the request response schemas, HTTP methods, and the parameters, URI and query parameters. It also helps client and like what are the consumers of your service to know what the service is and what all operations have you invoked and how we can invoke, and just for information. And that's the reason we also say like it's also used for documentation purpose. RAML helps the developers as well and the consumers as well. In what way, we will discuss this in our next slides. So what we are going to cover as a part of best practices today is is following the following bullet points. We will walk through one by one. So first is use spec driven development. So what is spec driven development? I would like to walk you through. It is basically a software development process that uses the API specification as a guide. Before you go for the implementation, we should have some specification in place so that we can validate that specification before going for the actual code. There is only one requirement in this process. Write the API documentation first and then jump for the implementation. This process is useful for both, for the developers as well and for the client consumers as well. How? I'll going to explain in further slides. So what this diagram is saying a lot about. So if you see the inner circle is nothing but the design of your API. So what it's saying, you have to design, you have to simulate, you have to ask for the feedback for the clients, and you have to validate whether you've got the perfect feedback or not. If you are good to go, then you can come outside and go for the second circle, which is nothing but the implementation. You have to build, then you have to test your API. If all goes good, then you have to again come out and go for the bigger circle, which is nothing but maintaining or managing your API. Secure, deploy, monitor, trouble. So this is overall life cycle of a spec driven development. So what are these bullet points is I already covered, like you have to design your pattern, you design your schema, and you have to mock that and get users feedback, make the necessary changes if you found any, and then start coding to the specification. What kind of development, what kind of benefits that we have using this? So if during the development process you notice that something is going wrong with some resource, so you go back to the documentation and change it first. At the end, you will have the API that delivers exactly what it promises. That's what we mean for API. So I'll just walk you through about the benefits. So first is parallelize the development process. So with the documentation in hands, both the server and client can develop simultaneously. You can, while you are designing the schema, you can just simulate and you can pass on the specification to the consumer, and you both can work simultaneously before you directly jump into the code. So mocking will have a better, can improve this benefit much better. There is a mocking concept I am going to walk through in further slides. Second is improves understanding of the whole. So while writing documents, you will face edge cases, find inconsistency, and notice some of the design problems. So this will make the development process a lot easier and decrease the amount of rework that you must do on a daily to daily basis on your code if something goes change on the YAML. So, and the third is guide development. Using the documentation as a base for spec-driven development ensures that API does exactly what it promises, and by delivering a great test coverage and decrease the amount of rework and amount of bugs that you might get. So this was all about spec-driven development. Our second aspect of best practices is think about the API. So here I would like to take a pause and ask some of you, like all of you, like what do you think, what comes in your mind when you got the requirement of like you have to build this API? So what comes in your mind before you go for it? Anyone would like to take that up?
Sumit, generally it will be the resources which we will be using, what type of security are we going to use, how many resources will be there, questions like that.
Exactly.
Sumit, I want to answer.
There are many more features.
So
Yeah, sure.
somebody is saying it.
Yeah, I want to answer this question. So when we think about the API first, we need to know what this API exactly does and what are the request parameters we need to send when it is a post method or get method or put method, what this API exactly need to do. And if it is a post method or put method, what request parameters we need to send, and what is the output of that API? I mean, what is the response? Then we need to define the error responses as well, error codes. All these things we need to think about when we design an API.
And just for the better game ahead, Sumit, we should be always thinking on the grounds that how can we make the same RAML reusable. So reusability is something which we will think.
That's a great advantage. Yeah. So whoever has answered that, I am not seeing your name, but that was a very valid answer. But Apurna, but yeah, you answered only on the parts of RAML, but there are some other big aspects of that we can think about the API. I'll walk you through that. Like just Supriya mentioned one of them, like think of a reusable perspective. Think from a reusable perspective, how we can reuse this RAML in all other future projects down the line, right? So how we can increase the consumers without having a minimum impact on your RAML. So anyone else who would like to take this answer?
So guys, if you are answering something, please tell your name so that it will be useful for us to, like just to,
Yeah.
I can see a lot of answer in the group, in the group chat, I would say, and it looks good. People are thinking about the CRUD operation, some contract, how the contract between the client and server, and how the contract look like request and response payload. So I can see a lot of good answer in the group chat.
Okay. Yeah.
From Ravi.
Okay.
Rajat,
So
yeah.
I would like to. Yeah. Thank you, Manish, for reading that. Actually, your voice is not audible correctly.
Is it audible now?
Who's trying to speak?
Vigneshwaran.
Vigneshwaran. हाँ बोलो. Sorry, I have to tell.
Yeah, we need to use a 3-layer architecture when we are going for API which needs to be reusable, like system API, process API, and then experience API. If we design that way, we can reuse APIs.
No, I think that is something you're answering on the ground of API-led connectivity, that architect point of view, that what are we going to exactly interconnect with? What are we going to expose, which is going to be get consumed, and what is going to be the interconnection? His question is on that one API.
Yeah, Supriya, but I think I can answer this to understand, to answer on your question. See, experience, process, and system are itself 3 different APIs.
Yes.
So this is question on the itself individual API. What we think, what kind of, what level of thinking that we have, what level of mindset that we have when we start implementing the API. It's okay. I will just walk you through. So we have came up with some of the guidelines and principles. Think of a long term first of all. So APIs should be designed for the long term use. It is easier if you understand your targeted API consumer, like what you have to build. So one thing that we say, like long term, you are probably really bad at long term. Some all are saying, but you may think you are good at design. But let me ask you this: have you ever looked at your code and a year later or 2 years later and say like, this is the most amazing thing I have ever implemented? This must be thing that we notice, like after the 2 years, 3 years, you will see your code only, and you'll see like, yeah, I would have done in this way, I would have done in this way. So always build your API with the future in mind. Think that things can change quick, but your API needs to adapt quicker. Think that you have millions of users to serve, but they don't have time to waste. So to achieve this, basically you need to judge everything about your API in 2 terms. One is sustainability, how your API will sustain if something goes, if something needs to get updated, and how your sustainability and scalability. These are the 2 major terms that we need to think on while building an API. And it also means building your API for beyond today. That's the challenge that we run into. Okay, today we say, yeah, this is the API, there are needs that we have, this is our platform, this is the best API. That is great, but we need to think like what this platform is going to get React after 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years. So think of a long term. And there are some bullet points. I'll just read about that. Your API is a contract. Think of API like this is a contract for all your consumers. Versioning is not a solution. There is a separate separate concept of versioning. I'll walk you through in later slides why versioning is not a solution. And there are some thoughts like you can pay a little now or much more later. You need to think things through. That will cover on next slide. And as I said earlier, mindset is everything. So what is think things through? So what are the things that you need to think in order to, like, before you go for API? Who is your API for? What type of API are you building? So you have to think through every aspect of your API before building it. These aspects may seem like basic questions and common sense, but they get missed quite a bit many times. How are you going to maintain your API? So a lot of companies said like, yeah, look, we are going to build an API, pointed out there, and that's it. But I promise, like, that's not it. You have to maintain it very nicely. And there are some mechanisms that are available, like you have some patches, security patches, and kind of. So you have to maintain. Just not you develop and you just throw it away. And how are you going to document your API? So document is something you're going to use a Swagger or a RAML or any other specification pattern. So these type of information that you need to think before you build for API. And other thing is, how are you going to let users interact with your API? What kind of authentication, authorization that you need, security policies that you have that are going to implement for that API? How are you going to protect your servers against attacks like example denial of service attacks, like whether we want to implement a JSON threat protection policy or accelerate melting to support that kinds of attacks. How are you going to manage support? So support is something you can either have a dedicated support team or some community forum, etc., etc. But these all things are play a major role, starting from when you build the API and from manage point of view as well. So this will play a long-term role for your API. Who will be next is who will be using your API. So when you build, so we need to understand like who will be using your API, whether they are the current customers, whether there's a business partner or some third-party services. What actions they need to do access again. They mean sitting down. You have to communicate with them from day one. So when you build the API specification, you can enable the mocking service and you can pass on the specification to them. Yeah, just test this. So these customers and developers, client and developers should be involved from day one only. How can you involve them in the designing process? I already covered that. Next topic is versioning a necessary evil. Why we called versioning a necessary evil? So in short, it's easy to say like we are going for a better version and it's going to be great, but it has certain drawbacks as well. There's the reason we call versioning. It's necessary as well, but it's evil because it has some disadvantages. So we'll walk you through one by one. So first is backward incompatibilities. So what is this? This is the first and foremost. Versioning creates backward compatibility issues, which means that when you upgrade your API, the apps relying on your API are going to break. And when they are going to break, you are going to have some complaints. This is one. Second is something multiple services to maintain and multiple systems to support. You may say, no, that's not how it works. We are going to deprecate this API and we are going for a better version. But consider you have $1 million customers who says, actually we are stuck on old API and we can't upgrade on the new API. So in that case, you have to maintain both the services. Or they might say like this one works. Why should we go back and spend money to fix something that doesn't broken, right? They don't want to change. They don't want to update on new API because they don't want to spend some money. So that is a valid point from all the consumers. You might have millions of consumers as well. So there will be you have to maintain all the API versions. And next is create confusion among developers. Many a times, if you have many versioning, so you might not know like this consumer is running on which version and which consumer is running on which version. So this is not this will create sometimes a confusion between developers, like for the support. Next is modularize and reuse. So modularize and reuse, when we think modularize and reuse, so there are two important concepts of RAML that we that come across in our mind. One is resource types and one is traits. So these are the RAML inheritance features that we have. So first is a resource type. What is resource type? Resource type is basically a template that is used to define descriptions, methods, and parameters that can be used by multiple resources without writing the duplicate code or the repetition of the code. So and traits is like a function. And first I'll walk you through resource types. So this is a resource type. So how can we define the resource type? So resource types collection is being defined here. If you see here, this is a collection, and what we have defined is we have given the description. There are two methods, get and post, we have defined in this resource type. And there's get, there's a description and the responses and post. So this resource type collection can be reused by multiple resources downline, in the downline. So how it can be invoked in the multiple resources? Yeah, so calling resource types from RAML. So if you see, there are two resources now. One is songs and the other one is artist. We have used the same resource type collection in both the resource type. So there is no need to write the duplicate code again and again. And it will optimize the RAML file as well. Coming back to the traits, Traits is like a function and it's used to define common attributes for HTTP method like get, put, post, all the HTTP methods, whether they are filterable, searchable, or pageable. So basically these two methods or these two features act as an, I would say, a reusable components in the language of RAML. You can, and whatever traits is, you can either define traits in your RAML file, you can also externalize them, you can also declare some of the policies in the traits, you can also declare the query parameters, URI parameters, all the components or all the attributes that we need to reuse in the RAML, we can go for traits. How we are declaring traits is traits with the traits keyword, and here we are defining the response messages in the traits, like the key is response message. Okay, and we want to, if you want to use this trait in some of the RAML, we can also reuse the trait in the resource types and also in the RAMLs. So left hand side, if you see, trait has been used in the resource types by the is keyword, is response message, and on the right hand side we have used the traits in the directly in the resource. If you want to use traits, if you want to put some client ID enforcement policy or some OAuth policy, we can also externalize some of the traits, and we can use on the resource level like traits here in the albums, like beside the resource, is by using the is keyword. And if you want to have separate query parameters, separate headers, then also we can use traits for that. Basically what piece of code which is going to get repeated, we can use traits. So this was all about more reusable strategies in RAML, resource types and traits. As I said earlier, like this mocking service I am going to cover. So what is mocking service? So mocking API mocking service enable you simulate the behavior of an API specification. It provides a test link to an API. So basically mocking service is a feature of Anypoint platform which runs continuously. You can run the mocking service from Anypoint Exchange as well. But if you want to simulate your call, you can also simulate from API Designer firstly, before publishing into a before publishing your API specification to an exchange. So when you add an endpoint, any endpoint to your API specification, API Designer automatically creates an internal link. Okay, using that you can mock or you can simulate your API. So there are two aspects of simulating: simulate a call to an API using an internal URL, and another one which has been recently introduced, which is using a public URL. So first we'll go through internal URL, which everyone you might have been used to. So first is, if you see on the right hand side, there is a yellow mark. If you go there, there's a documentation section, and here you will see all the resources that you have defined. And by clicking on the particular method, some mocking service will get enabled, and you can simulate your call. You can do the mocking of your respected resource by using the internal URL. So this is what we do in our RAML. But if you want, you can also ask consumers to test this before going for the actual implementation by using this function, simulate a call to an API using a public URL. So if you see on the right hand side, a yellow button is marked, which is mocking service configuration, which has been recently introduced. So here we can see the public link for that resource. We can copy this and we can pass on to the consumer. We can also set the expiration date of that link as well, where that we can mention that this link will get expired after a certain period of time. And if you click on this disable this button and after like quickly enable, then you will get a new URL created. So every time it will create a new unique URL, and you can set your expiration time. So this was all about like how we can simulate a call using an internal URL and a public URL. Any questions?
Sumit, can you explain one more about this mocking URL? What exactly it means?
Which one? Internal URL or public URL?
The mocking URL, whatever mocking URL you were explaining.
Okay. So again, yeah, I'll just try to rephrase. So this, if you see, if you develop or if you create any API specification in your design center, and if you created any of the resource, let's consider this sales order dispatch. I have two methods involved in this, get and post. So firstly, I'm going into the documentation section, which is yellow, which is marked as yellow here. I'll click on the get button here. Okay, once I click on the get button, I'll get some dialog box here, and I'll be looking like this, design center allow me to put all the mandatory parameters, the body for post method, and I need to just click on try it. If you see on the right hand side, I'll click on try it, I'll get the response. So this is something a mocking service enabled by Design Center only, which I can test on Design Center only. That URL I can't provide, I can't check in browser. Okay, I can check. I can't give that URL to the API consumers directly. But there is another option which will create a URL public link which can be accessible by all. So we can enable this public URL and we can provide this public URL to all the consumers who wants to consume this API, so that they can also start their development very prior, and they can test the behavior of the API specification, how the API is behaving. They can provide their feedbacks, and quickly we can turn around all like resolving. We can resolve all the bugs, defects that we have before going for the actual implementation, and that will save a lot of time. And we can also set some expiration date for this URL. Let's say we want to test, like allow the consumers to test this API for 2 hours, 3 hours, then we can set some date, or we can set some time. Is it making sense, Manish?
Yeah, it's making sense. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. The next part is from the best practices point of view is resources and naming. So normally what we follow is first pointer is use of camel case. So why camel case is recommended? Because all the resource names should be in camel case. It's better to do that in that way, and which will include all the field names, resource names when you design, when you create some RAML specification files. So camel case is a very standard and recommended way. And second is when you create any resources, so what kind of word I could say we use, whether so use nouns in lowercase to represent the rows. Why? Because in short, a RESTful URI should refer to a resource that is a thing instead of referring to an action. So you cannot create a resource like play or kind of, you have, so not play, but yeah, get, post. You have to give a noun to that to your resource so that it will be meaningful. And you can also use a dash or a hyphen in between if you have, instead of using underscores. So just an example, what is a good way and what is a bad way. And if you see on the below, there is a hyphen being used in the resource of your URI parameter, and then above it's underscore. And next question is kind of, I would like to ask this question, like what difference comes in your mind when you see a URI parameter and query parameter? Like the basic kind of difference, when we should use URI and when there is a need to go for query.
Yeah, actually, let's say you have some customers. Okay, that customers, what are the resource you define? It will be plural, and it is used to get all the customers. So when you want specific customer information, so will be having some kind of unique ID. So you will define one URI parameter, and let's say your customers are present over the geographies. Okay, you want to query some customers based on geographies, so you'll define query parameters on top of your customer's resource. So yeah, or if you want to get based on the created customers over a period of time, something like that. So you can go for query parameter.
Yeah, that was correct partially. Actually, you just provided the example, but on the very terms, like why we use URI parameters is like we should be very smart enough to use, like understand why we use URI and query first of all. And URI parameters basically used when we want to identify a specific resource, right? So if you just give an example like customer, okay, so customer ID, if you want to extract the specific customer information, yeah, then we will give some customer ID in the URI parameter to get the information of that specific customer. Okay, but if we want to search in that way, like we want that type of customers who live in Mumbai, so we'll just give like address equals to Mumbai, and then we'll get all the customers in return who lives that data lives lives in Mumbai, right?
Yeah.
So basically URI parameters used to identify a specific resource or resources, whereas query parameters used to sort or filter those resources.
Yeah.
So just the way we give an example of customers, employees, we can give any type of examples. Yeah. So this is a basic difference. So one should know like when to use URI. I personally experience like when there's no need of URI, then people use query parameter for that. So it is very important to understand when to use URI and when to use query from the best practices point of view.
Hi Sumit, this is Apurva. Actually, I want to add one point. Basically, URI parameter we use whenever we want to use filtering out something. For example, specific customer ID we are filtering out on the customer resource, and query parameters are basically used for to query or search with some extra information. So that time we use these two parameters, I think.
Yeah, Apurva, that is absolutely correct. But I would not say filter is a correct word that we can use for URI. Actually, filter can be used for query parameters, and because URI parameters give you the specific information, right, about some concept. So you can use that query URI parameter to get the information of a specific resource that you want to.
Yeah, so just to add one more point to Sumit. So URI parameter is nothing but just to have a direct relation or parent relationship with the resource. Okay.
Yep.
So if you want to link resource with the sub resource, how you will link together? That is, URI parameter will come into picture. So you can see direct relation with the resource.
Yeah, URI parameter does not perform the filtering operation in the backend, right?
Correct.
So we have to give some we have to give some specific ID. If you give the invalid ID, you will get there is no customer in the band, so you will not get any response. But query parameter is something it will actually do the filtering in the backend or searching criteria and find out all the records. It will iterate all the records, and whoever matches the condition, the response will get accordingly. Okay, this was all about resources and naming. Next is HTTP codes. So normally we maintain all these HTTP codes in our ML files, especially 2xx ones and 4xx and 5xx. 3xx and 1xx are rarely used. So we like there definitely it's the best practice to keep specific HTTP codes related files in your ML. What kind of response that you are getting from a client or from server. Each resource should have at least one HTTP verb associated with it to represent the action that can be performed on that particular resource. And each method should return accurate HTTP code actually for resource method pair. You can also add description to each method. Use the correct HTTP codes for each response. So these are all. 1xx is used for informational purpose, and 2xx we all know 200, 201 that is used to create, or when you want to create, you can use 201 for get. You will have 200 for success type of responses. 3xx is something when we want to redirect your URL to some temporary URLs that you have in your as a backup plan when your primary endpoint is not available or something goes wrong with your primary URL. 4xx is something we already aware of, like when we face any client related errors like bad request or authentication errors when you are actually reaching to the server but server is not accepting your request because of some invalid parameters. 5xx is something when a server is not available totally due to some unfortunately due to some when the server is down, or there might be some firewall problem or might be some IP whitelisting problem, then we'll get 5xx when you're not able to reach the server. Next and the last topic for this last feature for this best practices will be HTTP verbs. So these methods are being used in the RAML. So we need to use we need to use it correctly for that. Use the correct verb to define the correct action in your particular resources. For example, get will be used only for obtaining the data. It's an idempotent function. So only used for obtaining the data. Where we want to use the put and where we want to use the patch. So put is something when you want to update the data, it will actually update the entire instance in your server. Because it can be used for both creating and updating. Commonly used for updating only when you want to go for the full updates. it will actually always includes the whole payload in the request. So it's always either all or
Sorry, Smith,
nothing.
I'm not sure. I can see some background sound. I'm not sure for me or for other, but
Yeah, I can also hear Manish.
okay. So guys, can you please mute yourself? Okay. Yeah, Smith, go ahead now. Thanks.
Yeah. So basically, put will update the entire instance. It's commonly used for updating only to update your full updates. It's always includes the whole payload in the request, and it's either all or nothing. It will update either all the information or nothing. So in short, put is not meant to be used for a particular update or a partial update. But patch is something to update data. It will update the partial data of your instance. So there is a basic difference between put and patch when you want to go for a put and when you want to go for a patch for as per your business requirement. Post is something we are all familiar with. It's a non-idempotent function which will use to store the data on your backend server. And the last one is delete, which will be used to delete an instance from your server. Yeah, so with that, I think I am done with this RAML best practices demo. Any questions? Any queries?
Hi Sumit, Harshit here. Can you hear me?
Yep, hi.
Yeah, I just want to know, can you please explain the difference between put and patch again?
Yeah, sure. So put is something what it will do now, it will use to update the data. It will update the entire instance actually. And it is commonly used for updating all. It will update the whole request. It will update either all or nothing. If you want to update a particular field, you have to use patch. You can't use put. If you want to update a particular, the whole instance will get updated in your server. So, but if you want to go for a partial update, you should go for patch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so suppose there is a record which contains 10 fields, okay, and I need to update only 2 fields. So can't it be done by put?
If you do put, now the whole instance will get updated. All the other 8 records will also get updated in your data server.
But how if I'm sending
Which can make an impact on the server? Which can make an impact?
No,
So depending on the
I'm sending the request, okay, 10 fields are there, and I have put the data which is same in 8 fields, and 2 fields are different, and I'm using put. Then all the other 8 fields will be same, right?
Yeah, it will not update. It will update for sure the 2 fields, but it is going to update the entire instance. So let's say, yeah, let me just clear. Let's say you have 10 fields and you are creating a record first. Okay, you will create the 10 fields in your server. Okay, now you want to update that, but suppose on the server side someone has changed the first 2 fields. Okay, someone has changed, but from the API when you do the update now, so the whole instance is going to update, not only 2 fields, the whole instance is going to update. So what put will do now, if the server if that request is not available in the server, it will create. If that's available, then it will update. So basically it will not going to update only the 2 fields that you have updated in your API or in your request. It will update the overall instance in the server.
Okay, so it's basically an upsert operation.
Exactly. Basically because we are not sure, like we are the only ones who are updating the servers. Like there may be some other consumers as well which they can, so it can create, or it may result into a data inconsistency. So that's the reason there's a it's very important to know like when to go for a put.
Clear, Harshit? Like
yes, I think I have some clarity right now.
Or else you can reach out to me, okay, Harshit?
Sure.
If you need any more clarification or something, how it works, okay?
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Any more questions or queries?
Yes, the example you used for the bad code and good code for the camel case and Dasher-Eyes, can that be added as a code smell into SonarQube as a rule?
Your voice is very low. I can hardly hear you.
Your example of good code and bad code, so use of camel case or Dasherise for the resource ID, can that be added into SonarQube and used as a code smell?
Which example it is saying? This one for the resource namings and this one.
Yeah.
The good and bad. When you that one.
Yeah, good and bad, right? So SonarQube works on the XML files. It will not check the RAML files. So using the XPath expressions, as we said, like it will only going to check all the XML files that we have in our Mule project. So we can create the rules. Yeah.
I understand why use of file ID in camel case is good, because the variable is obviously created when you use the API kit router. So it was just whether that could be enforced in some way.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I can see some question from Rajat. Can you please explain the traits again? I'm not sure this question has been answered earlier or not, but this is the question from Rajat. I can see in the chat. Can you please
I think
again?
Sure. So I'll just. So what are traits is something traits. Yeah, so trace is like a function, actually a common. It can be treated as a reusable component in the language of RAML. It's a function which is used to define the common attributes for HTTP methods. When we say common attributes are nothing but, you can say, a request or response. There's a way in the example, I think you see we have created a response. Response is 200 body, which is including the message data created. So this type of response we can or this piece of code, I would say, which we can reuse in all the either in the resource types on the left hand side or either in the resources by just using the is keyword. So if you see on the right hand side, we have declared the traits inside the RAML only, and we have called that trait by using the is keyword at the bottom of the resource. Is response message. We can also left hand side also we have created the traits inside the RAML, but there is an option we can also externalize these traits. Let's say I have this resource albums which is having 20 query parameters. So defining 20 query parameters will not look good in your main root RAML file. So it's better to have a trait for that different trait file, and you can import that trait file in your main RAML, and you can use is here in the resource at the resource level. You can use is, and that whatever you will keep the name for that query parameter, you have to keep that. So basically what piece of code which you see is going to get repeated as per your requirement, you can use traits for that. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think he got it. If not, then yeah, I mean, I can see he has responded with thanks. So it means he got the clarification.
Thank you.
Yeah. So RAML part is completed, Sumit?
Yeah, Manish, RAML part is completed. Now the next topic will be data view functions.
Okay, so before we go next, I have one announcement for the community. Not announcement, I would say, regarding the RAML. So MuleSoft is coming up with RAML 1.0.1 version now. So you will see a lot of feature again, and there are a couple of bugs reported by community in 1.0.0. That is why they thought of releasing the new version of RAML 1.0.1. But again, the header will remain same. That is 1.0 RAML, but there are new set of functionality coming, and we are not sure when this will get released, but hoping that in next 2 to 3 months you will get some new version of the RAML again. So this is just a news or good news you would consider. Yeah. So that's all from my side. Akanksha, so
that's a very nice news, Manish. We will wait for that.
Yeah, thanks.
So we can take 10 minutes break maybe, and we'll connect back at 7 p.m. Exactly.
Are we covering the RAML question right now or after the break?
No, after the break we can cover up RAML section and the data view as well.
And the data view part then.
Okay.
It's 7:50 now. 10 minutes break. I hope that should be fine for everyone.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
should be
we
fine.
can.
It should be fine. Even if it is not fine, then still we have to join. So that's
Yeah, it's already Saturday, yeah, and we have
okay.
evening in
Yeah,
Mumbai, so yeah, 10-minute
Yeah,
breaks is fine, yeah.
we
yeah.
have a
10-minute break
evening
is
there,
fine.
and there's a favorite program of Sumit which will come on TV. I won't mention the name. So
No,
he
it,
wants
it
to
seems
see it.
it seems your favorite program, Supriya. You are blaming Sumit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Look the
Not
blush she is
Sumit,
doing. Look
yeah.
the
I know.
blush
I
she
know.
is doing
Sumit,
and the smile.
Sumit, it's yours. At least don't hide. Anyway,
Okay.
so
So
yeah,
yeah,
let's
yeah.
meet at
Already I
7.
started. Yeah. Thanks. See you guys.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi, Akshita.
Yeah, time up.
Time up, yeah.
So Sumit, as you said, like we'll be starting with the interview session and then we'll be taking the quiz questions, trivia
Yeah,
quiz questions.
we'll take the quiz questions for both of them at the end, for ML as well and for data.
All right, sure. You can share your screen and you can take the controls.
Yeah, sure.
I hope everyone is back.
Or do you want me to wait for a 1 or 2 minutes? Or I can start?
Let's wait. Let's wait 1-2 minutes, please.
Yep, sure.
So do you guys have some plan for weekend, Sumit, or how it goes?
Actually, to be honest, this time is from Indian time zone is 5 to 8:30, na. So we can't have any plans. Previously, it was in the morning, now like 1 to 4, 1 to 5. Then we can have some plan in the evening, yeah. But I can understand like there are members who are joining who are not Indian based, or they are from as consider you're also foreign. So we have to have some generic time zone. But yeah, today there is no plan as such for me. Supriya might have some plan. I don't know.
Yeah, but if people have plan on the spot, right? Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the big people. Yeah.
Supriya, what has Supriya doesn't have any plan. I'll eat and I'll go to sleep.
Akshita, you?
I think we can everybody turn on their video if they don't mind. Akshata, Sudeshna, Vishnu.
Sure, yeah, we can capture a screenshot as well.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
So can you come in the nice light?
Yeah, actually, let me just come.
Okay. Deepak Taluri, can you please show your face to the world? Deepak Taluri, can you please show your face to the world?
The right position right now.
Not in the right position, meaning what?
Wrong place. No light.
Wrong place. Okay.
Yeah, all right. Manish, you're back?
I'm back, but I'm having lunch. But okay.
Don't worry, we will not ask what is there in lunch that we wanted.
Okay.
I know what you must be eating.
Yeah.
Sumit, you click now. Sumit, you have iPhone 11. If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I've taken screenshots. Maybe we can get started.
Rishabh,
I am having a bad light at my place.
It's okay.
Thank you, Apurva. Thank you, Rishabh.
Hi,
Apurva, if I'm not wrong, are you like from Accenture or no? You're speaking on mute. You're on mute.
Hi, Venu. People are.
Hi. Sumit, is your light okay now?
I'm just struggling with my light. Give me some time.
But why you want to?
I'm just roaming around.
It's
okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, this is good. This
is good. Yeah.
This is good. Won't click the picture. Deepak Taluri, you at least please click the picture. Do that much for
Yeah,
us.
taking the picture. I think Akshata is taking.
Hey, Francis. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Deepak Taluri, lena picture.
Deepak Supriya, I'll send you.
I'll send it.
I'm smiling from long time. Is it done or what?
I am not smiling. I'm giving a weird expression. Hey, can you please clear? I didn't even not prepared. The speakers are not prepared. Wait, click again. But say na 1, 2, 3 start something like that. How will I understand?
Taking lots of pictures of us.
For me, it doesn't matter. I never smile, so for me, it's fine.
You are smiling right now, Manish.
Okay, I'm taking.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
taking
I'm
one.
taking pictures.
Okay, guys, I think we can get started because people have some plan for weekend.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, we should.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Done,
Thanks,
right? The
everyone.
last picture is done,
Yeah.
now. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Please share the
Fine.
photos. Okay, so I'll come. I'll share my screen again. Just let me know once it's visible.
Yes, Sumit.